And we're going to take a look at what's grabbing the headlines in the international papers this Tuesday with Flo Villamino. Hi there, Flo. Now, lots of focus, first of all, in Turkey on more attacks, rising tension between various militant groups, but particularly between the government and Kurdish militants.
That's right. Now, this is, of course, those attacks that took place across the country. Yesterday, a huge story in the Turkish press. If we start with a look at the front page of Hurriyet Daily News, so that's the English language version of Hurriyet, you can see they're talking about these terror attacks that hit the police, soldiers, U.S. consulate. If you want all the details of yesterday's events, you can check it out in the Turkish press here. You can also check it out all over the press in the U.S. as well, though the Wall Street Journal has it on their front page today. This wave of attacks in Turkey kills 9 people. Of course, that figure could change. Now, Libération, the French paper, says that yesterday's attacks really bear all the trademarks of Kurdish guerrilla operations, and Libération says that essentially these Kurdish separatist groups are responding to Turkey's air campaign, which is not only targeting the Islamic State group in Syria and in Turkey, but also Kurdish separatists from the PKK. And Libération says that in Turkey there are a lot of fears that there could be a downward spiral of violence that could really upset a peace process between the Turkish authorities and Kurdish authorities that started 3 years ago.
Yeah, things had been starting to come together, hadn't they? Let's look across the Atlantic. We're moving stateside to Ferguson, Missouri. Now, as we understand it, people have been leaving the streets there in the last couple of hours. But we have had a second night of unrest. The first one was after the first anniversary of the shooting of Michael Brown, the unarmed black teenager killed by a white policeman.
That's right, and lots of tensions on the streets of Ferguson. Local authorities have declared a state of emergency. You can read about that in the Wall Street Journal today. So there was fresh violence between protesters and the police around this one-year anniversary. You can see here the Washington Post is talking about a state of emergency and frustration. And there's a quote from a local activist there that's saying, really, not enough has changed in the past year. It's August 2014 all over again. And it's true that the photos and images coming out of Ferguson are very similar to what we were saying a year ago. If you take a look at the front page of The Guardian, you can see a photo of those protests, and you can see here they're talking about 1 year on, new violence in Ferguson. Now, 1 year later, this issue of police brutality, white police brutality on often unarmed black men is still an issue. Interestingly enough, the cartoon in China Daily today addresses this issue. You can see they're talking about it as an issue of human rights. Interesting, coming from a Chinese paper.
Indeed. Now, those pictures certainly very dramatic, but people over in Ferguson have been saying in the last few days there have been some changes. Some people are seeing progress.
There are some changes, and what's interesting is that all this was sparked in Ferguson. This is a nationwide change. Slate, the French language version, says that the events in Ferguson really changed America. Why is that? Because the events that took place on August 9th, 2014 were far from rare. The fact that Michael Brown was shot dead by a white police officer, this was not the first time this occurred. So why did this one incident spark this change nationwide? Well, Slate says a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's social media, essentially. These images really shook a lot of people because they were all over the place, and they were quickly followed by other incidents as well in Staten Island, etc. Slate describes it as the shooting that it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. That's what Ferguson was. They say that Ferguson really brought to light a system of police brutality against black men often, and it sparked this Black Lives Matters movement. Ferguson was like an earthquake, a tectonic shift in the debate on race and racism, according to Slate.
All right, let's stay in the United States. Donald Trump, we talk about him quite a lot, don't we? He's maintaining his edge over a crowded field of Republican presidential would-be candidates.
That's right, very crowded field. The Washington Post, a more liberal paper, likens it to a clown car. You can see this little clown car here, and it's run into a big obstacle. That's Donald Trump, looking a lot like the Joker from Batman. He's calling his counterparts rookies in this debate. What's interesting is only 10 of the 16 candidates could take part in last week's debate.
Well, Trump is still pretty much at the centre of a media firestorm, isn't he, over some more controversial comments. Are they ever not controversial from him?
He's on a roll, isn't he? You can read all about these comments in Politico. Now, this is about one of the moderators in last week's debate, Megyn Kelly. She's a famous anchor in the U.S. on Fox News. She asked him some questions during this debate that he probably didn't like very much. She asked
pretty much her job.
Which is her job. She asked him about his description of women as pigs, dogs, and slobs. Now, he says that he came back on this debate in an interview on Friday and said you could see the blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. A lot of people interpreted this as comments about her menstrual cycle. This caused an uproar, as you can imagine. You can see Politico saying that, well, he's not apologizing for anything. He actually says that Megyn Kelly should apologize to him. Megyn Kelly, meanwhile, has addressed this dust-up, as she called it, and she says that she won't be cowed by Donald Trump. I certainly will not apologize for doing good journalism, so I'll continue to do my job without fear or favor. Meanwhile, what does all this say about the Republican Party? Well, there's a good cartoon in The Independent where you can see likens the Republican Party to a bunch of lemmings here jumping off the cliff. And who's in the lead? Well, you can perhaps recognize Donald Trump's famous hair or wig leading the lemming party here off the cliff.
The cartoonists are absolutely going to love this race, aren't they? Thanks very much, Flo Villamino, looking through the international papers for us there. We're going to take a short break now here on Live from Paris. Do stay with us. We'll be back very shortly with more news headlines.